Okay, back to the phones we go. This is Rachel in Manhattan. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hi.
Hi, Rush. You know, kudos to your brother, David. He was on Crossfire last night.
Yeah?
And he is the only one on cable TV and the Sunday shows all these weeks or months that use the word extremist against the liberals, finally, against Stephanie Cutter. You know, when you use, and she was in shock, when you use their words against them, they can't believe you're standing up to them. Republicans should all be saying extremist progressives, extremist liberals have been running this country for the last 5 years, and they've run it into the ground. And there are no more moderate Democrats left. They've got to start using the word extremist, important word.
It's been a
liberals.
long time since there were any moderate Democrats.
Right. And they also got to use the word fairness. And they've, what's the fairness? Why is this fair that Obama gave over 1,400 exemptions to his wealthy corporate friends for Obamacare and not the American citizens? Fairness is another thing. I mean, it's
okay. So let's get back to David, because what you liked about it, I think, was that you saw somebody that's on your side fighting back and not accepting the BS that these people just routinely utter.
Correct.
For example, Bill Burton was talking about how poor the economy was that Obama inherited. And my brother pointed out it was not a bad economy to the extent that Bush was in charge of it, but the policies that weakened it were policies your guys supported, like the subprime mortgage crisis and so forth.
Right.
And he hammered him on the fact that they're the ones causing the debt problem. They're the ones that got to rein in spending. And he did call them extremists.
Yes.
And I'll tell you how I knew it was a successful appearance.
Yes.
You know how I knew?
How?
Because on Mediaite,
good,
the website that reports what happens on the media, they had pictures of David and Bill Burton.
Yes,
and the picture of David was real mad as hell, his face screened, and Burton looked like a smiling, soft-spoken neighbor next door, which is what the left does when they've been caught. They try to, with these optics, they characterize conservatives as these screaming loud extremists. And they do it with, their flash photography. Take a still shot from the video that fits the bill that they want. I knew it was good then. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. El Rushbo and the fastest week in media. This is already Wednesday. I can't believe it. I've been looking for a slow week, but it is zooming by. Since our caller Rachel from Manhattan mentioned my brother David on Crossfire, I figured why not just play some sound bites from it? Because there was somebody once said, I forget who, somebody once said when they bring a gun, or when they bring a knife, you bring a gun. That was Obama who said that. When they bring a knife, you bring a gun. And somebody once said you get in their face and you just punch them out or something like that. You punch them. That was Obama, too? That was Obama's. That's right. That was that community organizer gangster Chicago talk, right? It was Obama did say those things. Well, that's kind of what David did on Crossfire last night. So he had Stephanie Cutter, who, by the way, she's pregnant. Did you know that? She's 44. She's pregnant. It's not known whether she's married, and it's not known who the father is. I'm just telling you what's in the news, Dawn. You can look at it and laugh at it. They don't know who. It wasn't announced who the father is, and nobody knows whether she's married or not. She's 44. And she's going on maternity leave soon, shortly after taking the Crossfire gig. I don't know that CNN knew that. And then, and Bill Burton was the liberal guest, and then David. So the first bite that we have here, let's see, this is Stephanie Cutter says, the last time we were in this position where the president set up a negotiation process with Boehner couldn't negotiate because he didn't have any control over his Tea Party. So on the eve of a deal, he walked away. Now, what happened? The American people lost $1 trillion in their savings, 401ks, money wiped out, stock market dropped significantly. We got a downgrade in our credit rating. So her setup is Boehner walking away. And you're right. A campaign aide is now a host on Crossfire, an Obama campaign aide. And she basically said, so the last time we had one of these, when Boehner walked away, the world ended. When Boehner walked away from negotiations, everybody lost everything. Here's what David said to that.
We didn't get a downgrade because of the impasse. We got a downgrade because of Obama's economy and this debt. $17 trillion of debt, $90 trillion of unfunded liabilities, which Obama has clearly stated he has no intention to do anything about. But Obama has gotten his way, notwithstanding your statement that we keep having gridlock all over the place. He got his way on the stimulus. He got his way on Obamacare, Dodd-Frank. And on the things that he can't get his way legislatively, he has done an end run around Congress lawlessly through executive order with the DREAM Act and the EPA. It's shameful what's going on.
Now, it's true. You would not have an elected Republican saying anything like that on Crossfire. They'd be gentlemanly and accepting the premise and then trying to argue it around the edges. But they tried to shout him down, but he wasn't having any of it.
Look at the results of Obama's agenda being implemented. The worst economy, the worst recovery in 60 years. You guys talk about the best debt reduction in 60 years. That's because you compare it to a different baseline of $1.1 trillion starting. And he has only reduced the deficit because Republicans made him. You ought to be ashamed of his record, with all due respect. I am scared of our future, because we won't do anything to rein in the debt and spending.
And so then the Republican host on the show said, Bill, are you ashamed of President Obama's record?
I am not ashamed of the president's record because I was there.
The American people when they reelected him.
Right. The president inherited a historic disaster of an economy. And what he's been able to do through the leadership of himself, his economic team at the White House, partners in Congress, is actually bring it back and put us on a path to growth as opposed to the path that it was on. If you recall, shedding 700,000 jobs per month when he came into office.
He inherited a bad economy caused by policies that he endorsed, like the housing policies. And Bush had a good economy for 6 to 7 of his 8 years, and unemployment averaged 5.3%.
You know, the thing about this is a stock answer that you get from these regime people. The president inherited a historic disaster of an economy. He did not. It was not a disaster of an economy. It was his election that began job losses every month of 700,000. In November of that year, 2008, that's when 700,000 jobs a month got lopped off, and that continued. One of the biggest myths is that Obama inherited a bad economy and then when he got there found out it was even worse than anybody knew because Bush had lied to him in their pre-presidential transition meetings and hadn't told him the truth about it. There was not a bad economy. Now, the financial crisis was due to one thing, and this was David's point, and that was the subprime mortgage crisis, and that was an Obama idea. That was something Obama supported. That was making banks lend money to people they didn't have. Any way of repaying it. And then the banks packaged those worthless mortgages as mortgage-backed securities, and they sold them to unwitting dupes. And then the dupes figured out they'd been duped, and they found a new set of dupes to sell it to, and finally they ran out of dupes. And so there was nobody to buy this worthless garbage, and that's when it crashed. Subprime mortgage crisis, a Bill Clinton idea. And they used government pressure to threaten these banks back in the 90s and the early 2000s. The Bush administration, with their regulators, tried to straighten it out, and people like Barney Frank practically threw the regulators out of congressional hearings. But it was not a disastrous economy that Obama inherited. David's right. Unemployment was at 5.3% for the vast majority of the Bush administration. Had 2 recessions, came out of 9/11. I mean, you know, these myths that these people continue to utter. It's that there's no truth that comes out of any of these people in the Obama camp at all. They manufacture this horrible economic story in order to justify policies that do nothing but take more money out of the private sector and grow the government, which is all the stimulus was. Obama's added $6 trillion to the national debt. The total is $17 trillion. since the founding, and almost a third of it, over a third of it, belongs to him? And they want to try to blame Republicans for the debt limit and the debt ceiling, and it's an utter disaster. What David was saying here, we have a purposeful destruction of the capitalist economy of this country underway. It is a purposeful destruction that all of these leftists totally and thoroughly support, and it has a lot of people scared to death, and more every day as they sign up for Obamacare and find out what it actually is going to mean to their disposable income as they grow and get older. So, a brief timeout. We'll get back to your phone calls when we return, so sit tight.